Hello, good afternoon. How are you guys? I want to make a reaction to this FBI record. FBI record on Tinubu. I saw a caption that says, "Releasing the record of Tinubu is going to endanger lives." And I keep shaking my head and say, is that a fair justice? I'm trying to find the reason why releasing his document could endanger lives. Endanger whose lives? His life or whose lives? So that's why I'm going to make a reaction to that particular video. Just so I'm just going to follow me gently and let's digest into it and then pieces everything together. Now, if the law is the same for everyone, friends, then let the law speak. The headline, "Lives Could Be Endangered If We Release Tinubu's Record." FBI warns US court. Raises a legitimate questions about transparency, accountability, and equal treatment under the law. But before we rush into conclusions, we need to separate what the FBI actually said from what politicians and social media commentators are saying. The FBI has asked a US federal court for permission to explain privately why it is withholding certain records connected to historical investigations involving President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The agency says that disclosure of some of the withheld information could permanently or potentially endanger the life or physical safety of an individual and could also reveal protected law enforcement techniques. That does not mean the FBI has declared that Tinubu is guilty of a crime. Let's make that clear and understand. It does not mean the records necessarily contain proof of criminal activity, and it does not also exonerate him. And it does not mean that every document being withheld is automatically evidence of wrongdoing. Those distinctions matter. So let me set that stage clear. But here is where the real questions begin, friends. Why should information relating to a public official be treated differently from information relating to an ordinary citizen? The answers legally is that there are circumstances in which an ordinary citizen record can also be protected. I'm trying to find an example where such has happened. The United States Freedom of Information Act contains exemptions protecting things such as confidential sources, investigative techniques, personal privacy, and information whose disclosure could endanger someone's safety. So if the FBI can demonstrate that releasing particular information would genuinely put an innocent person in danger, expose a confidential source, compromise an ongoing investigations, or reveal sensitive investigative methods, then there's a legitimate argument for withholding or redacting that specific information. That principle should apply to Tinubu just as it will apply to an ordinary citizen. Okay? If the information would endanger an innocent person, protect that person. If a confidential informant identity is contained in that record, protect that informant. If an investigative technique is still legitimately sensitive, protect that technique. If someone's private personal information is contained in that document, redact it. That is reasonable. But let's put that aside, friends. But there is another side to this argument. Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not an ordinary private citizen. He is the president of Nigeria. He occupies one of the most powerful political offices on the African continent. And when an information concerns a person's suitability, integrity, history, or conduct in a manner potentially relevant to public office, the public interest becomes considerably greater. That does not mean a president loses every right to privacy. It means that the higher the public office, the stronger the public interest in legitimate transparency. This is where I believe Nigerians have every right to ask questions. This is where I believe every citizen of the world have a right to demand answers. If some portions of the record are legitimately dangerous to release, then redact those portions. If confidential sources need protection, protect the identities. If private information about unrelated individuals is contained in the record, remove it. But if there are documents that can legally be released without endangering anyone, why should those documents remain hidden? That is the question that the public deserve answered. And this is why the court matters. He should not demand that the FBI simply dump the sensitive investigative files onto the internet. That would be irresponsible. The proper question is whether the FBI can demonstrate to an independent judge that the exemption is relying upon a genuinely justified demand. That is precisely why the FBI is seeking an ex parte in-camera review, meaning the government wants to explain its reasons privately to the judge rather than revealing sensitive information publicly. FBI asked U.S. court to privately review sensitive records in Tinubu's issue. Why? Now, let me break it down to the way you're going to understand. The FBI said it will provide the declaration to the court by August 28, subject to approval of its request. That is the FBI records on Tinubu. That is automatically evidence of cover-up. Okay? That is not automatically evidence of cover-up. But there should, but neither should Nigerians automatically accept national security, confidentiality, or someone could be endangered as a magic phrase that ends every question. There must be accountability for the claim itself. And this is where the ordinary citizen question becomes very important. Okay, imagine an ordinary citizen applying a job, a visa, a security clearance, or public office. Suppose there were illegitimate historical records concerning that person's activity. Would the government simply say, we cannot release anything because the closure could potentially endanger someone? Perhaps if the law actually provides a valid exemptions. But if that ordinary citizen were involved in a matter of genuine public interest, the relevant authorities will still have to justify withholding under the law. Excuse me, please. Now let's answer this question. Why should the standard be different because the person is powerful? That is where I have concern. It shouldn't. The law should not say one rule for the powerful and another for everybody else. If the FBI has a legitimate legal exemption, apply it. If it does not, release the records. If only part of a document is protected, redact that part and release the rest. That is what transparency should look like. And that is what Nigerians and the citizens of the world are requesting. But something must be dealt with. We must also be fair to Tinubu. It will be intellectually dishonest to say the FBI has records, therefore Tinubu is guilty. That conclusion has not been established. Investigative files can contain allegations, leads, interview, intelligence report, correspondence, and information supplied by a third party. An investigation does not automatically equal to conviction. The public must wait for the actual document and examine what they contain. All right? If the records are eventually released and they contain nothing criminal, then Tinubu should be entitled to that fact being acknowledged. Okay? I don't know if I'm making any sense. I try to balance the equation. I'm arguing for and against. Okay? I'm arguing for and against. I want to balance the equation. Okay? If they contain serious allegations but no substantiation, that distinction must also be made clear. If they contain serious allegation but no substantiation, that distinction must also be made clear. And if they contain credible evidence of wrongdoing, then the public deserves to know that too. Fact should determine the verdict, not political loyalty. Okay, this should not be an APC versus PDP versus Labour Party versus ADC or argument. This is bigger than Tinubu. Today it may be Tinubu, tomorrow it could be Peter Obi or Atiku Abubakar or Kwankwaso or Adeleke or Wike or any ordinary Nigerian who suddenly find himself at the center of major investigations. So if we support transparency only when the information hurts the politicians with dislikes, then we are not defending transparency. We are defending our political team. And that is one of the Nigerians' biggest problems. Now, what are my positions to this? My position is simple. Protect legitimate confidential information, protect innocent people's lives, okay? Protect legitimate investigative method, protect legitimate investigative interview, protect genuinely private information, and also do not use the protections as a blanket excuse to hide information that can legally and safely be disclosed to the public. Nigerians deserve an answer. Let the judge examine the FBI's evidence. Okay. Let the court determine what is legitimately exempt. All right. Let protected information remain protected. Those are my assumptions, or this where I stand. Let everything else that the law permits to be released becomes public. And if there are records concerning the president that can be safely disclosed to Nigerians, Nigerians have every right to demand their release. But whoever that is occupying the #1 office in the country need clarity. Not because we have already decided that Tinubu is guilty, but precisely because we have not decided yet. We need answers. The public deserve the evidence. Okay? The most important principle is this. A president should not be presumed guilty because an FBI file exists. No individual should be presumed guilty because an FBI file exists. But neither should a president be presumed permanently beyond scrutiny because he occupies the highest political office in Nigeria. The powerful deserve due process. The ordinary citizen deserves due process under the same law, equal justice. The innocent deserve protection, and the public also deserves what? Transparency. If releasing a particular document genuinely put an innocent person's life at risk, don't release it. Okay? If releasing a particular name exposes a confidential source, redact it. All right? If releasing an investigative technique compromises the law enforcement, protect it. But if the information can safely be released and the only thing standing between the Nigerian public and the truth is political embarrassment, then release it. Because democracy cannot survive on who is in power or which party you belong to. Democracy cannot survive on trust us. Democracy survives on what? Here are the facts. Examine them for yourself. And that standard should apply whether the person involved is an ordinary Nigerian or the president of Nigeria. We are equal under the law. No special treatments. No political persecutions. All right? No cover-ups. I repeat, no cover-ups. No rush to convict. Just the law, the evidence, and the truth is what we request. I raise my case. So you guys, please share this video. And they're gonna want to hear from your comments. Let me read from your comments. And if you are not yet subscribed to my page, please do so. Okay? Share the page, join the community, and then also comment. Give me thumbs up if you like the content. All right? See you guys. Bye-bye.